Hi, everybody. Jason here from Murideo, and welcome to today's webinar. I have a very special guest with me today, Jeff Boccaccio from DPL Labs. Jeff, how are you?
I'm doing good, Jason.
Good. Good to see you. Good to hear from you. How's everything going on your coast?
Our coast, it's a little overcast and it's rainy, but
Yeah,
at least it's
yeah.
not at least it's not a hurricane.
Yeah, at least there's no
Uh,
hurricane.
we,
I feel you on that.
yeah,
We got a little bit of that last one that came through over on our side.
yeah, yeah. I know that thing was a real crazy storm going back and forth.
I know it just kept
And,
wobbling until it finally decided
yeah,
where it wanted to go.
yeah. I know it did a major impact on our shores here
Oh,
at
sure,
high
sure.
tides.
Definitely,
So
definitely.
when we get out of it, and we do it all the time, it's nothing new,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And,
It looks like you're
so,
in your lab, probably doing a lot of HDMI 2.1 testing, I'm guessing.
Yeah, we're starting to look at some of these products coming through. We've been looking at them for probably six months, maybe more.
Sure. Yeah.
And they're trying to see where they are. All DPL members, as you guys would know at AB Pro, if they send their product in, not only do we tell them how they're doing, but we'll try to recommend ways of improving them.
Totally. Yeah.
Even if they're good, sometimes you get good ones in, and you say, if you did this, this little thing and this little thing. There's all that magic sauce you can put in there
Oh
that could
yeah.
make it better.
Sure.
And it's really interesting because when you think about the overall industry and how there's always a little bit of paranoia with HDMI's horribly coined phrase "plug and pray."
Yeah.
Uh, I would hate to be an installer. Geez, because I've been there so many times where I plug it in and it doesn't work.
Right. Yeah.
And it's and you have to look at that and you have to analyze why are we going through this? We didn't do
Right.
that back in the analog days.
Right. Right.
You can remember with component video. I mean, it was working every time. I mean, we
Man,
never had problems.
I cannot tell you how many times I'll hear the comment like, "Why can't we just go back to component video? It just works."
Oh, I know, I know,
You
I
know,
know, I know.
I
And
used
it's
to get.
it's really
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
no. I was going to say that what a lot of people didn't realize is when we started DPL Laboratories, we actually started it as an engineering firm. We didn't
Mm-hmm.
start it as a test and measurements company. And we were basically a freelance engineering firm, and we did
Mm-hmm.
that for years. And we
Yeah.
did it for all the majors. I mean, we built for all the majors that everybody knows about.
Mm-hmm.
And as a consultant and as a freelance contract engineering company, you have to make sure that you take care of your customer.
Mm-hmm.
And we were getting flack back that their products weren't making it in the field. And we knew we were following the spec right to the T. So why
Mm-hmm.
is this not happening? And I've
Right.
been
Right.
doing this a long time. You follow the spec, it usually is dead nuts.
Oh yeah.
And so what we had to do is we had to figure out how do we take care of these accounts.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was pretty bad. I mean, as everybody probably knows.
Yeah.
And the only way we could do it and to due diligence to make sure we took care of these accounts is to go out and fix it.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't anticipate what was going to happen. You
Sure.
couldn't predict what was going to happen. You had to say,
Definitely.
okay, poor guy's on the phone. He doesn't understand what to do. So if they couldn't get it into the lab, we went out on the road.
Mm-hmm.
With the equipment. I mean, we spent a fortune on this, but we
Oh
knew
yeah.
that we needed to find out why this is happening. It was going to be in our future. We're not going to get around it. Let's figure out what it is. And when we started doing that, it really opened up a huge opportunity because there were countless problems,
Mm-hmm.
and it wasn't like it wasn't like it was out of spec. Okay, but the problem with the spec, in my opinion, is that it's a little bit too loose.
Okay.
And so you get all these manufacturers that make televisions and Blu-ray players and set-top boxes and Apple TVs, all this stuff, and they all do their thing and they all do something a little bit different.
Yep.
And sometimes they'll brag about it,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Hey,
I'll
look
say,
how we're
what do you
different.
mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, why did you do that?
Right.
And
Yeah.
of course, what happened at the end of the day was the cables got blamed for everything.
Always seems like, right?
Always the cable got blamed, right? And now, granted, I mean, there were some cables in there that were pretty dodgy. We found
Mhm.
some pretty dodgy products, but in reality, the cable, the interface should have been lax enough so that if there were any abnormalities in the electronics, there should have been enough dynamic to salvage that. I mean,
Sure,
there's no reason why we couldn't do that. I mean, today's technology, come on. I mean, give me a break, you know? And
Yeah.
so as we started doing more and more of these case studies, we were revealing things, Jason, that you just would not believe.
Oh man, I bet it was wild.
It was wild because, you know, what a lot of people don't know is that a source will rely on a sink, and a sink will rely on a source. And the transmission line's got to be able to basically be a conduit that is literally seamless. It's got to be invisible to the spec, right?
Right.
And what a lot of people don't know is that the electronics that are inside the source can have an effect on what happens at the sink, and vice versa.
Totally, yeah, yeah.
And this is where the cable now has got to be the referee in a way, right?
Right.
And so what we realized was, as we started fixing these problems and creating an entirely new specification of test spec, we could not go back to the norm.
Right.
I mean, we had evidence right in front of us. I mean, it was reasons why it was going bad, especially when the Cat5 extenders came out. Oh,
yeah.
Geez.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
That was a mess.
I remember the early days having to run 2 lines.
Yeah.
Cat5, yeah.
And you know, remember how we're always so, you know, the spec is tight in some areas, and where that is like in timing.
Right.
You know, timing, and of course it gets harder as the frequency goes up.
Sure.
And then, you know, guys are out there using category 5 that are basically used for Ethernet. And those things are purposely de-skewed, those damn cables. So we're automatically dealing with a de-skew problem that's happening over the differential pair, which I'm sure many don't even know what I'm talking about, but it's the video channels that have to be in perfect timing.
Right.
And so and then they were making electronics that would go along with those. They were breaking every rule in the book, including robbing the power supply.
Oof.
And the power supply is so small. I mean, you're lucky to run a couple of LEDs on it, you know, and here these guys are sucking the power down. And so and what happens is that it's an avalanche effect that happens because you know, if you do something to power, well, that will affect the I2C bus, which is the DDC line, which affects its rail, which affects its threshold, and which affects its rise time. So by just checking its capacitive loading, which is what HDMI does, you need to go in there and see the whole gamut. And so when we did that, we were getting waveforms that were so out of whack, and of course you probe it back and you figure out where the problem came from. In some of those cases, it was the power supply, and that power supply is critical in the HDMI bus just for itself, because they only give you about 300 millivolts of leeway on the low side. And it's only 300 mils. That's all you got.
Not a lot, yeah.
Distances, yeah. When you start going long distances and they're not supporting that with either supplementing good power supplies or some characteristic of that nature, you're in trouble. So we found tons of this, not only in that area, but in video, and what to look for in the video. And then when we can do that, as you guys know, is right on the eye pattern. And then you have to understand the anatomy of the eye pattern. And I was gonna actually bring that slide in today, and I thought it was probably a little bit too deep right now.
Yeah,
but you know,
I just wanted to say real quick, Jeff, for those of you who are listening right now, with Jeff and I from DPL Labs, we're probably going to end up doing like an ongoing series and at least do a few kind of episodes with Jeff. And the purpose of this first one was just kind of an introduction to DPL Labs and who they are and what they're all about. And as Jeff and I are talking here, guys, feel free. There's a chat box here on your interface for the webinar system. Feel free, guys, type in those questions. The more the merrier. We want to make sure you guys are clear on some of the things we're talking about, especially when we start talking about HDMI and 2.1 and the issues that we're bumping into. So feel free, guys. Again, the more questions, the better. Feel free to type those into the chat box. And then we'll leave some time at the end, too, to get some questions if anybody has any towards the end. But Jeff, I remember seeing that DPL Labs seal of approval, and I don't remember at this point what product it was on, but it was some time ago. And I remember thinking to myself back then, like, this must mean something. This must mean something very cool and interesting, and it must meet some sort of standard to get this seal of approval. So take us through a little bit of a history of your kind of your background and how you started DPL Labs and what is it exactly you guys do? Because again, there might be some folks out there who are brand new to DPL Labs.
Yeah, I mean, I started off with, you know, I went to engineering up in the Connecticut area, and then, of course, they got me on the lottery system, and they pulled me out of that for the Vietnam route. So that was kind of like a road downer, but
Yeah,
I got out of that. I got out of that, all right. And after that, I ended up doing some consulting work with Macintosh.
Oh, perfect.
And
Right up my alley.
I also, yeah, and I also worked at a retail store you know, while I was in college. And I got into it. You know, you get into these. I got really into this retail stores, and of course that was only audio, okay, back then. And I loved it. I loved it. I had a ball. Opened up a store in Boston, and I kept that store for, I don't know, 18 years or so.
Oh,
and
great.
then yeah. So it was right to that whole audio transfer to like home theater and component video and all that kind of jazz, you know. And then you know, it got to a point where I got to a point where I wanted to go back into engineering again, you know, and I had enough retail, but I learned how to sell.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I learned how to do that real well.
It's,
and so it got.
I'm sorry. I was just going to say real quick. It's so funny you mentioned that because as a wee lad, I was working for Best Buy back in those days in the late '90s, and we didn't even have, to your point that you just said, we didn't even have back in those days a home theater department. Audio and video were two separate departments. So somebody would come over to audio and we would hook them up with some speakers and a receiver, and then, okay, you're ready to pick out a TV, you need to go talk to the video guys. And thinking about that now, it sounds insane, you know, because now it's, you know, now as you just said, it's all one. Yeah. But it was interesting times though, for sure, back then.
Yeah, and when I finally broke out and started going on my own, you know, we built it up. I got a partner to join me, so we started the company. Really, in the first 2 years, we were developing. I got a partner in back, and with that, we started getting involved with a lot of the associations, and one of them was, since I always had some interest in video. You know, we were part of the Advanced Television Committee.
Oh, cool.
And this was long before you know, HDMI. I mean, this was back in analog.
Yeah.
And it was a big deal of moving out of NTSC and getting into high definition television.
Oof,
and
that was so fun.
It was so political, Jason. I was in Washington every 3 months.
Wow.
And it was a joke. It was a joke. You had all these manufacturers that are in there saying, yeah, but me.
Oh,
and that's all they're trying to do is produce high definition television. I'm going to challenge you. Because during that time period, there were, I think, 13 different formats that were brought up to be used, right? And the FCC, which actually was the FCC and the Consumer Electronics Association that got together that made this thing happen, right? And the FCC was having a hell of a time because they had all these guys that were trying to get in and being something in the high definition category.
Sure.
You know, whether you're a high end video or not, they were trying to get in. And so over time, they developed all these different formats, and they said, look, it's gonna be too expensive. It's gonna be hard to do all this. And they argued and argued, and finally they came out with the thing called the Grand Alliance. I don't know if you remember that.
I don't remember that one, but I'm guessing a bunch of manufacturers finally just said, forget this, let's figure all this out together. That's usually how those alliances go, right?
It was kind of like that. It was actually the FCC. They said, okay, this is stupid. Let's get everybody together, put them in a room, lock the doors, and when they come out, come up with one format. And so, it's really what happened. And they came out with 14 formats instead of one. It was even worse.
Wow.
And and that's why you know we're faced with a lot of the things we see today, because a format is like 1080p. That's a format, right? Then they had another format, and now we have all these. Now you look at 2.1. And you see all the features and benefits in 2.1, and there's all kinds of different
many
there, which everybody should be very aware of, because it's all data dependent on where you are in that spectrum.
Totally.
And that Spectrum 2.1 is very big. It's much bigger than we ever had before. So, you know, a lot of guys need to really watch what they're doing there, because, you know, some products will make it to 8 and 10 gigs and other products won't. And so,
Sure.
you know, at 8 gigs is 32 overall. And that'll just get you right in the beginning sets of 8K, low end 8K, but you won't get any further than that. So, you know, it got crazy. And so, and of course, remember at this time, it was a done deal. It was going to be 1394. I mean, it was Firewire. There was no DVI. There was no HDMI.
I do remember Firewire. I remember Firewire on some old high-end cameras from maybe mid 90s or so. Yeah.
Well, the 1394 Trade Commission, which I was part of that too.
Yeah.
Really got going on this, and it was a great interface. It was Apple did a great job with this, and the guy who designed his name is Michael Tainer. Great guy. He got to be really close to the Caltech guy, really sharp guy. And this thing was just never ending. It could have gone everywhere that we wanted to do. But, you know, I'm sure politics came involved. And so here, after a couple of years of working around it and getting into to the point where we're going to go 1394, you know, I remember I was in Cabos, Mexico, at an NTES, was it HESA meeting.
Sure.
And, you know, I went down there for one of our clients. They wanted me to do a presentation on it. So I went down there, and one morning I came outside, and there was a courtyard there, and I started a cup of coffee. And one of the guys came up to me and said, "Hey, did you hear, by the way, they decided on DVI for the interface?" And I said,
"Oh,
what?
Yeah.
What are you talking about? I mean, it's a done deal. Everybody's already, Mitsubishi already had their products made.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a done deal. And in no time at all, man, it went to DVI, and then they compartmentalized it into an HDMI connector, and there we are. So that's where we're going to be. So it really was again a highly political situation. So we were in it from the beginning during that time period, and then of course we were still doing engineering because we did format converters and interpolators and switchers, and we did all that for video, including component video and VGA, and of course into DVI and HDMI. So you know, it was a journey as we went through that. But then as the problems developed, that's how DPL was born, because we did all this work and we found all these problems, and they're all correctable. I mean, like I said, the way we found the problem was by fixing the issue.
Sure.
And you know, he says, "Oh, geez, if we would have just tested it this way, we would have caught them."
Yeah.
So of course our test and measurements procedures are much more dynamic than what you see from HDMI, because they only go to that standard, you know, high-speed data testing process, which, you know, we do in PCI Express, we do it in SODED, we do it in all the interfaces, not HDBaseT, but DisplayPort, all those use the same kind of testing measurements. But you have to go further than that, because you gotta detail out what's going on in the entire interface, not just the video,
right?
And how the video relates with each other. And the guys in the field don't know, so you know they're ripping these cables through studs and they're wrapping them around things, and they're breaking every rule in the book, you know. And again, if there was just a little bit more leniency, and so what we started doing is we said, okay, let's change the rules. You know, change the rules. Because the most important part of that in that system is really the cable.
Gotcha.
And what people didn't understand is that we needed to test the cable in a system environment.
Right.
You can't test the cable on its own. You know, you test it on its own, and sometimes you put it in a system environment application, which we have to build. Well, now the truth comes out. Now you can see all the things that would go on that somebody would see in the field. And so this was a huge success for us, because we were able to develop this it's called an argumentative matrix of data, where one thing fights another thing, and with all the data that's put in, we can pretty much make a judgment call as far as where you are, and how you are, and what you're, you know. And then we could also detail out where in the interface you got a problem, you know, whether it's crosstalk or whether it's leakage or whatever it may be. You know, we can find the problem, and then we can locate it really quickly. And what's nice about that is a DPL member like AV Pro and Murideo, we'll go back and say, it passed, and they'll say, oh yeah, but
yeah, it's
you know,
always.
Want to make it a little bit better, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to get we want the cable to be the champion. We want
Gotcha.
the cable to be the fixer.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want the cable to be the problem. We want the cable to be the solution.
Mm-hmm.
And you can do it. You can do it. That's all you have to do is follow the rules. And you can take a system that probably wouldn't work. I'm talking about electronics.
Right.
And you put a cable in there that's got that dynamic range, and it'll save the system. And the custom installation person wouldn't even know. It just all of a sudden it's working, and
works.
he's gonna get paid.
Right.
So
right.
That was our mission.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we've been doing over the last 10 years. And it's been a lot of fun. We've met a lot of people. And of course, now we're extended into Asia and Europe. And,
that's excellent.
And the Europeans are a little bit slow, but they're getting there. They seem to be getting it. The Asians are just, how do I say it? The Asians will do funny things. They will do funny things. I'm sure you've heard about the golden reference.
Oh yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. They're real big on that golden reference stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't work. You can't do a golden reference.
Right.
You've got to do some kind of auditing. You got to watch how things are going on. And we knew that years ago.
Sure.
And we had product that came in. And this is an interesting story, which I think your listeners would like to hear. And I know we do tons of cables.
Mm-hmm.
And I can go into the cable business today. I got so much stuff. And we have to archive it. As long as it's still out there being sold, it has to be environmentally archived.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone disputes it, we can go back and retest and say, okay, safe. Right. And so we got this guy and a manufacturer, and a nice guy, really good guy. Doesn't have a whole lot of HDMI background, but he wanted to get into the business. He wanted to sell cable. So, he went to China, did the typical thing, went to China, found some company that would provide this cable for him. And what he did is he heard about us and he said, geez, can I become a member even though I don't have a cable? And I said, yeah, you can do that. You can do that. I mean, because what he wants to do is he wants to bring the cables in and have us take a look at them so we can give him an idea what's going on with them.
Sure, yeah.
Which is perfectly okay, and I do that for a lot of people. So the guy goes gets the samples, and now this is back in the S7 days. Remember the Redmere days? A lot of people remember it as Redmere.
Yeah.
And this is when active cables became really big, and especially with 18G. And 18G started the active cable business really. And so he said, "Oh my God, I want to do my 7 meter. I want to do my 10 meter. I want to do my 15 meter. And we said, okay, you can do that. Well, ask the company about S7. They've got products that will do that. And of course, we've seen the products over there and everything. So, we require a certain amount of samples to look at, because we don't look at one. We look at least 3.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so he sends a half dozen of these in, and we take a look at them, and Jesus, Jason, they were good. They were good.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they didn't work. They didn't work, but they were really good.
Yeah.
And the reason why they didn't work is because they probably, had wrong instruction by whoever made it, whoever soldered it. And there was one differential pair. Okay, so if people don't know what differential pairs are, it's basically 2 wires that make up one signal.
Yep.
Which means that we have in 18 gigs, we have 4 signals. We have a clock and then 3 data carriers, and those operate on what's known as a differential pair. And those differential pairs they're polarized. So you got a plus and you got a minus. So of course, if you have 4 of them, or let's say 3 of them, well, the pairs also judge the phase, right? So if you flip one the other way, the phase will flip. Well, like I said earlier, HDMI needs timing. Timing's important, right? When you're 180 degrees out of phase, you got a little bit of an issue.
Yeah, that might cause a problem.
And so one channel, it was D1, I think. It was D1.
Yeah.
One channel on every single sample.
Oh, So that whole batch was probably toast.
Well, yeah, I mean, the samples didn't work, but they had they had fantastic specs.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, they followed every way. I told them what to do. So he told them, he said, do this,
yeah.
do this. And they did it, right? So I said, so I have to give him a call. I have to give him a call.
Mm-hmm.
I said, hey, listen, you know, they did a great job, but they failed.
But yeah, yeah, yeah.
He didn't understand that, you know, and I
Mm.
felt bad for him, you know. And so I explained to him what happened. He said, what do I do? I said, go back to the company and tell them that you want more samples.
Mm-hmm.
And if they took D1 and just swapped it around, you're in good shape.
Good.
Well, he made one little error with that comment I made. In good shape. Because
Mm-hmm.
about 3 months later, I didn't hear from him 3 months. So 3 months later, I give him a call. And I said, by the way, how you doing with this? You know, what's how's the cable? I haven't seen the new cable. He goes, oh, they're coming into port next week.
Mm-hmm.
I said, what? What do you mean they're coming into port next week? And he said, well, yeah, I went and started making them. And I said,
Oh
no, you don't
no.
want to do that.
So he went
And I
into
said,
like full production.
yeah, 10,000 of them.
Woo!
Yeah, 10,000 of them. So he got his little butt out there and literally went to the freight forwarder and took a few cables out of one of the containers, I guess. I don't know.
Oh
And he
man.
shipped them up to us, yeah. And he shipped them up, and they got that wire right, but they
But
failed.
what they missed this time?
And now this is the beauty about China. This is what's great about China. And trust me, I love them. They're good people. They really are.
Mm-hmm.
That just this is the way they do business. This has been going on for years. So to break them out of this mold, you know, and that's why we're there all the time. We're always there because we're visiting cat factories, doing presentations. We're trying to break them out of the world because they have no lifeline.
Yeah.
They really have no lifeline. They're on their own. They basically get a cable and they copy it. And they buy
Yeah.
the wire and they say, oh, let's hope they got it. Is it working on
Slap it
TV set?
together and
Fine, let it go,
yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so what happened was this. Redmere made several types of products.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they made, you know, inexpensive ones. They made really good ones. And the one that we told him to get, which he did, was about, I don't know, I think it was about $3, something like that.
Yeah.
And so we got and the reason why it failed was because the clock channel failed.
Oh.
Now, that's the easiest one to pass.
Yeah. Ouch.
You know, but when you stretch it over 15 meters,
That's a
you know,
long
at that
distance,
point
man.
it was 100 and let's see, the data rate was 150 megahertz. Yeah, I mean, it gets pretty bad. So anyway, so I opened it up and looked at it, and it was a different part.
Oh wow.
And this part didn't have a clock amplifier.
Ooh.
So they just took the clock and bypassed it. So they went ahead and made 10,000 of them because they figured the guy would never know.
Ay ay ay.
And they failed. And I told them we couldn't give him his mark.
Sure, you can't stamp that. Yeah.
And I said the best thing you can do is ask the company if they're really good, they'll take them back. And they did. They took them all back.
Good. Good for them.
And they fixed them. The only problem with that is he lost 4 months of sales time.
Oh yeah, yeah. And
so
Jeff,
you know
how much of this? I mean, I can only imagine. You know, I can't tell you since the beginning of HDMI. In those days, I was still in the field doing lots of installations every day. And you know, we just got into so many debates with people on the quality of the HDMI cables. Does it really make a difference? And yada yada yada. And the story you're telling me just makes me think of all of the really inexpensive cables that we see out there on the internet. You know, I'll just go buy a $5 cable off whatever.com. It'll be just fine. And I can only imagine how bad some of those must be.
Well, you know, they come in the dirt. We call them in the dirt, and that's the low end. Remember, I told you we want to get into the champions.
Right.
We want them to be better, or at least as best as you can get, so you can interface with either piece of electronics. Because now you throw an AVR in there, and now you're dealing with three.
Yeah.
You know, you're no longer dealing with two. So you know, things get more testy.
Absolutely.
Because you got three variables involved. And people, you know, people don't understand their interaction between these. They all interact with each other, you know, and especially on the DDC line, because there's special resistors in there that do a job, and those resistors are shared between all three companies.
Right.
So if you get those resistors mismatching not so good,
yeah,
you know, one may work better with one cable and one work better than another cable.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where you got to be real careful on how you do things. So, you know, why else would a cable work with one and not work with another? I mean, come on, give me a break.
Yeah,
And these are the reasons why. Yeah. So they come in from all walks of life, and what they come in as, and you have to understand. I'm going to tell you something you're not going to believe.
hey, at this point in this industry, and this many years in, anything's possible, right?
We do all of our testing, and so does an HDMI. I mean, they all do the same kind of testing. We do it all in analog. It's not done in digital. It's not done digital. Now we accept digital information, but the scores are actually done in analog.
It's all analog, right? Yeah.
It's all analog. So what we do is we look at numbers, and of course we have limits. There are performance limits, and those limits, okay, are low and they can get high. So they're not like low and high. They're like low, a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better. So they're analog. And so what happens is people will try to get by, you know, just skim by. And then, you know, then you got a 10% tolerance just in factories, manufacturing, right? So you got to worry about that little tolerance in it. So, you know, then you got to think about, well, you see, we got 4 channels to deal with. We have an I2C interface, which is the DVC line, which is extremely important because that carries all the HDCP. And of course now under 2.0, that's status control now. That's a real big deal because that's error correction, all kinds of stuff goes on there. And then of course in 2.1, everything goes on there with, you know, with link training and with equalization. So I mean, it gets this is getting pretty complicated now.
Yeah.
And so we need that interface to work absolutely perfect. So there's no room for someone to come in and be a little bit out of line. So like I said, it's an analog world for us.
Sure.
And it's okay, how good you want to go, you know? And so we're trying to build the champions. We're trying to, you know, get these guys to, and what we do, we tell them, we talk to AB Pro about that too. We always want them to know that they want to be the champions. And of course, AB Pro is always in there doing that. And many of the DPL members will take advantage of that because, you know, they already paid for it.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, we tell them, look you're a member, you own part of this equipment we have here.
Right.
You need something done, get it over here. Let's take a look at it.
Yeah, let us know. Yeah, sure, sure.
And the factories in China are beginning to understand that, and especially on the factory testing side, because in production, basically, you know, they put them from an Apple TV to a TV, and if it passed, they go.
Yeah, and it's out the door, in the box and out the door.
That's suicide, absolute suicide. Yeah. And so the only way to really do that is to get some real good test equipment in there. The problem is the expense is so out of whack. Yeah, I mean, if anybody knows how much those things cost just in the oscilloscope.
We one of the things that blew my mind, and I had never seen this before, but some years back we did get an oscilloscope, and we had it at the lab up in Sioux Falls in our main lab, and just to see the eye diagrams and really start to see like what is going on. And not just in the cable itself, but in testing the HDMI connections on certain products and seeing that some projectors, for example, have a super tight tolerance. And if anything is even remotely close to out of that tolerance, you might not get a picture. You might get a flashing picture or something. And on the same token, you might have a source with a really sloppy output, or an HDMI connection rather, and you hook up a sloppy source to a very tight tolerance projector, and now you have all kinds of problems. And I've seen integrators before swap projectors out, and it's this big deal, and ends up not fixing the problem. So I totally get what you're saying, that when you're talking about like the integrity of that signal, all the way from where it originates at the source, all the way to where it dumps in at the sync device or in the display. And if everything's not in line, everything's not within a certain tolerance, boom, you have problems.
Yeah, I mean, the tolerances are still, I mean, they're okay. I mean, they're kind of the same tolerances you see in PCI Express. I mean, they're okay. The problem you run into is the dynamics between all the electronics. And then, you know, you got to think about input sensitivity. Here's a perfect example of what you talked about with the projector, right? A lot of times, what we did here for a while, it got to be a joke. It got to be a joke. We designed a product where we can go into a TV
Mm-hmm.
and we can vary the input on the TV to see where it would breach.
Oh, okay, that's cool.
Okay, see, okay, how low can I go before it
Yeah.
lets go?
How low can you go? Yeah.
Okay, and those receiver chips are off the shelf. I mean, it's not like
Oh
they
yeah.
came up with any. And so when you get a receiver chip that's off the shelf, it's got a certain spec to it. Well, then why would they be so different from one TV to another?
Right.
Well, there's a very good reason why. Is because if they decide to put, let's say they put 5 inputs on a TV set.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. Now, how do you get 5 HDMI connectors on one board
Mm-hmm.
and get them to some form of mux where they
Mm-hmm.
can switch
Yep.
and keep the timing straight,
Yep.
and then get it over to the receiver set to do its job?
And
Okay.
by the way, the TV's this thin, so you have to worry about physical space too, right?
Yeah, right. Well, they do it vertically. They'll do it
Right.
vertically. That's
Right.
why they're like that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
what people don't understand is that when you put an HDMI connector on a board and you put another one right next to it,
Mm-hmm.
you got 19 traces coming off that pin,
Yeah. Right.
and and those traces have to be balanced lines, so that
Yep.
the spacing between the differential pairs have to be perfect. The
Mm-hmm.
timing's got to be perfect, and then you've got the insertion loss. So if the connectors are way far away, there's more insertion loss in the board.
Okay.
And the
Interesting.
board can produce a lot of insertion loss. So what we found was that we had one here, our Samsung here, and we found that we went to input 1, which you think would be the best one, and it was the worst one.
Oh.
And it happened to be, yeah, it was at the end of the chain. So that as we started doing this, we
I
got
see.
to 3, and it got really good, and then we got to
Yeah.
4 and 5, and it got bad again. Why? Because 3 was going directly right in. Well, do you think your installers know that?
Oh no, there's no labeling. There's no,
No.
there's no way to know that.
And it could be as much as 2 or 3 dB and difference.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
when you're down, when you're down to numbers, and again, the guys don't know the numbers maybe that well,
Mm-hmm.
but when you're down to numbers and we're dealing with mils, we're dealing with millivolts.
Right.
We need, typically we want to be around that 500 millivolt range,
Mm-hmm.
typically. But then we got into actives, and we found out that now we had a problem on the high side, where they were too much, because
Gotcha.
the envelope has a top end limit too.
Mm-hmm.
So that brought up more problems with saturation insertion. And everybody knows about this. Then they went to AOCs. The originals came out. They were saturating. Everybody said, "Oh, AOC is the best thing in the world," and the next thing you know, they're not. So
Yeah.
you have to dig in, and you got to find the truth. You got to find out what's going on,
Mm-hmm.
and then you report that to your members. And we report it
Yeah.
every month in the CE Pro column that we do.
Right. Yep.
So
Yep.
we try to keep everybody up to speed on that. That column's been extremely successful.
Yeah,
We
so
get
guys, here
tremendous response.
for the listeners out there, CE Pro. If you don't subscribe to CE Pro, I would highly recommend it. As Jeff's mentioning, they do a monthly article in that magazine, and there's tons of great industry news in there, and just things that are up and coming with AV and commercial and stuff, and residential even. So if you're not subscribing to CE Pro, I would highly recommend it. It's a good publication.
Yeah, they do a good job, and they're not good. I'm probably in the wrong area, because I tend to go to that technical side. It's just a habit of mine, and and so I get people will write in and say, "This is really great, but I don't understand what the hell you're talking about."
Yeah.
And so then I'll get a call from Jason Knott, and he'll say, "Jeff, tone it down a little bit. Just tone it down."
Right.
So
Sure,
I
sure.
try to work with pictures, put pictures in.
Yeah.
So
Visual aids.
and and so it's amazing, the stories that we have. Oh my God.
Right.
On things that happen in the field, and companies, and it's just like going back to the Far East. They really are good people. They just don't have anybody to talk to.
Sure.
And we go out there, and we did this one presentation I was telling you about yesterday, and we're there for 7.5 hours of presentation time.
Long day.
And I
Yeah.
was beat. I mean, I was a wet noodle. I'm not 25 years old anymore. And so, and I'm standing up there, and the thing was over with, and then they had the Q&A. Well, Jason,
Oh man, that's another 7 hours.
it was like a chow line.
Yeah.
You ever see the chow? It was a chow line.
Yeah.
And it just meandered.
Oh
It
wow.
must have been 3 more hours. I'm down there, and you know, and the people come up to me and they say, I don't like HDMI, you know, and they're just confessing.
Oh,
I mean,
sure.
just automatically. I'm not probing them; they're just telling me, you know.
Right, right,
And
yeah.
I said, oh, that's okay. So what's your problem? And they all have their own issues. They don't know.
Sure.
And so they finally have a lifeline, you know. And so over the course of the last few years, you know, we're getting to know them real well. You know, we have a really good understanding. And now we're finally to a level of providing them with some extremely good instruments
That's
that
excellent.
can go right on the production line
Yeah.
for a fraction of the cost of what normally would cost. Now it's only good for production line work. It's not
Right.
good for laboratory work. But for
Yeah.
production line work, you know, we're actually going to give them the opportunity of reading eyes on the production line.
That's cool.
So, yeah.
We've talked a lot about cables, especially today, but you guys also certify lots and lots of other things. I did want to just mention our Murideo 6G generator is a DPL certified device. So if let's talk about that for a second. So if I'm an integrator out there in the field and I'm looking for some way of testing or generating HDMI signals to test infrastructure, to test displays and things like that, what separates something like this that's DPL certified from something that's not? Is it the tight tolerances? Is it that it's bit perfect? Like, what are you looking for when a company like us sends you a product like this and says, hey, what can we do with this? What are you looking for?
I'm looking for a piece of test equipment
Mm-hmm.
that an integrator can take in the field
Mm-hmm.
and can emulate the exact output from the source. That's a source product, remember, that's a source.
Yeah, perfect, yeah.
The exact what a source should be doing, because what they do is in the specification, they look at the source being, okay, here it's here, and by the time it gets there, it's going to be here.
Right.
And they go through these simulations with worst case scenarios. And what we do with those products is we run them through those worst case scenarios.
Yeah, you beat
so
them
we
up,
want to make sure, we beat them up. And you know, we try to see, we want to push the envelope to see where they're going to fall. Example on the I squared C of that. If that I squared C was too good, I would have bounced it back and said it's too good. And the reason why is because that's not real. That's not what the boys and girls out there are going to see. They're going to see something like this, right? And or sometimes they'll come in and they're not good at all. And now you're in another position. You can't do that. Same thing with video. Same thing with CEC. All of those things, and power supply. You know, we had an issue. In fact, in the earlier days, the first ones that came in, the power supply was a little bit wrong, and I reported back to Jeff, and man, he just got out right on it.
Yeah,
and I mean, in less than a week, we had new units in here.
Oh, excellent.
And that was corrected, gone. It was done. And so, you know, again, being proactive on the manufacturing side, you know, going out there, getting it tested, finding out where the flaws are, and you know, and not with, you know, that's why we're independent. We're an independent agency. Nobody tells us what to do. We have no guidelines we have to follow. We follow our own guidelines. We know where the things got to go. And you know, so it was really one of the first generators out there.
Yeah.
That they could use in the field, and of course, a lot of the manufacturers in China adopted that.
Oh yeah.
You know, I can remember I calling Jeff up and saying, "Look, I need a couple of these. I'm going to China. I want to show them what's going on." And you know, they loved it because now they had a standard, rather than an Apple TV or a Blu-ray player. You know, now they got a standard. Now the TV is not for sure.
Right. Never.
And that was the missing link. The missing link was the TV. And even though we had the Murideo and the Murideo did fine, it wasn't going to do the TV. And now they're really concerned because with 2.1, you know, we're going so far out there in data rates that they're really worried because they're already getting hurt on 18 gigs. Even though they may go through the TV process, the interoperability between TVs are so crazy. And so they came to us. And that's when they came to us and said, "Can you give us something that we can put in there?" And you know, we did it. We got it done. We got a little software work to do yet, but maybe by the end of the year they'll actually having iPattern instruments at the end of their assembly process.
That's good. That's great.
So that's first time in history.
You guys are really kind of leading the way and really helping It sounds like it sounds like you're here to help everybody get better, and I really admire that. That's you know, and the fact that you're totally agnostic and you're just in it for the
Mhm.
science. I love that. I
Yeah,
love that about
and
you guys. That's really cool.
yeah, and it's fun, Jason. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah,
You know, you get to do webinars like this, and you get to talk to all the folks,
yeah,
and
yeah,
you get to presentations around the world. I get to be with you on these webinars.
yeah.
You learn some more, and
Always,
you'll
always
know what to
learning.
ask on other guests. You'll be able to ask them better things. But with the science behind it is fun. You
Hmm.
get up in the morning and you just can't wait to get into the lab
Yeah,
because
yeah.
something came in the night before, and
Oh yeah, you
this
get
happened
like,
just 2 days ago.
yeah,
I
yeah,
got this new AOC came in, this new
yeah,
AOC,
yeah,
and this is unbelievable. And we already know these guys, and so they said, oh, we have this new AOC 2.1. Oh, it's so great, you're gonna love this thing.
yeah,
And so I said, okay, well, how many you got? She goes, well, we got 5 samples from you of different models. I said, okay, why don't you send them on over? We'll take a peek at them.
yeah,
So
sure.
they come, and I can't wait. I can't wait to try it. I can't wait to see what they do. I mean, it's like it's like you're turning on a TV set to watch a movie. I turn on
Yeah,
my oscilloscope to see what they
yeah,
do.
yeah, yeah. You're
And
ready.
yeah, and it's anyway. They come in, and so they have this. They have their high one. They have a high end one. Then they got all the way down to maybe their entry level product.
Hmm.
So I took the entry level product, put it in, and it didn't even make 18, let alone make
Oof.
48.
Yeah.
Uh, so I said, oh no, don't tell me it's going to be. So of course you try all the channels and make sure it's all consistent. And so I took that one and tossed that one. I was doing. Then I went to the next one, and it did 18, but that's all it did. It
Hmm.
wouldn't go more than 18. So out of the 5, 2 did 32.
Oh wow.
None of them did 48.
Yeah. And 32 is
So
short too. I mean, we're hearing
well,
stuff at 40, so you'd think they would at least hit that, right?
yeah, you got to be at 40 if you want to get
Yeah.
into the big leagues. You got to be at 40,
Yeah.
And so and this is fiber.
Yeah. Right. Right. Right.
This
Yeah.
is fiber.
Yeah.
And and I'm sitting back. So I had to give them a call. And
Yeah.
of course they're in China, so I had to do a Skype with them at at 10:30 in the evening
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they're and you got to take care of them, and that's
Oh, of
okay.
course. Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you get a her and say, listen, you got some bad news with these things. Oh, no. And then you take the pictures and put them up on the screen and say, this is what we're getting here. You got some real serious issues here. And we
Yeah.
showed them where the issues were. And so we just send that back to them now, and now they've got to correct it and bring it back. But Jason, you got to think about why would you take products like this and send them in knowing damn well that it's a punt?
Yeah.
And you know something? They all do that.
Well, maybe,
They throw them over the fence.
maybe because they know that you're going to be testing them and really putting them through the paces. Um,
Yeah, well,
maybe.
what about the ones that don't come here?
Oh yeah, I mean exactly right. If I was a manufacturer and I wanted more feedback on my product, I'd probably send it to you and say, hey, how can I make this
Yeah, tell
better?
me about it. It's like with the generator, the
Right,
Murideo
exactly,
generator. It's
exactly, yeah,
exactly the same situation, So,
yeah,
but I can see that we're probably getting low on time. But I wanted to at least bring you up to that stage, and as we proceed, we want to do some more videos, more
totally,
webinars.
absolutely, yeah,
Let's orchestrate a plan
mm-hmm.
where we can do, like an initial HDMI 101,
Yeah,
where we
yeah,
can bring some
it'd be
slides
cool,
in and show them. Maybe
yeah,
some of it will be repetitive, but some of it will be new, and we can
yeah,
work our way right into 2.1.
and
Because if we can get them up to a 2.1 level, understanding today,
mm-hmm.
the liability behind this, the liability alone is horrible. I mean,
Really,
if you don't get yourself, oh yeah, I mean, what happens if they go ahead and put in a fiber that I just told you about, right?
yeah,
And the guy is assuming it's going to work next June,
mm-hmm.
and we know content's not there yet.
Right,
And next June comes around, and it's in the wall somewhere. They didn't lay pipe. They can't get to it. I mean, they're liable for this,
yeah, that's
and
true,
and and it'll cost them a lot more money.
right,
Not only the embarrassment, but so we're trying to circumvent that by getting them educated, understand what to look for, what
sure,
signs to look for, what marks to look for.
Yeah.
And we can do that by way of these webinars too.
Yeah.
By getting them that way. So.
We want to be able to provide education and information to the listeners, really. So for those of you who are listening, whether it's live right now today, or maybe you're watching this on YouTube later, feel free, shoot me a message, jason@murideo.com. If there's a specific topic you'd like to learn about with HDMI and you'd like Jeff to kind of present and to explain what's going on, please let us know. We want these to really help you guys more than anything. Jeff, there was one question that came in a little bit ago. We should maybe take a minute to take a look at. This question's from Jim. He says, do you think the industry will ever move away from HDMI, like maybe to USB or another method?
Oh boy, I gotta watch that because it gets a little political. But
yeah, and I guess maybe from a theoretical standpoint, will HDMI ever hit a limit?
Yeah, I think I'm going to use my nice safety term. In my opinion,
there you go.
I think there's a huge opening for USB-C.
Yeah, sure.
Beyond.
Yep. Got all my laptop has it. All my phones have it. Everything.
And we test those. We test
right.
We test those in Lightning, and they have a lot to offer. They still have their issues. Don't get me wrong.
Sure. Sure.
But the problem with those is that you don't see them going 30 meters or 100 meters.
Totally, no way. Yeah.
And plus when we do those, there's super speed lanes and non-super speed lanes, and they go both directions.
Gotcha.
So it gets a little bit more complicated. So there have to be electronics involved.
Right.
So, but in my opinion, I think that we're going to see it could be a USB world.
Yeah.
By the time we move out of 48.
Yes.
When we move to, whatever the next level is, I think there may be at that point, because I can tell you what was really funny, and but I think you're going to kick out of us because we're almost done.
Oh, sure.
I can remember being 2017. I was at CES, and I went
to that one too.
And did you go to the HDMI 2.1 announcement?
No, I didn't catch that live. No.
I went there.
Yeah.
And they had a bunch of people there, mostly press people, but I stay in the back because the guys in HDMI really don't like me.
Yeah.
And that's perfectly fine. In fact, the more they don't like me, the better off I am. But I sit in the back and listen, and they always got their eye on me. They got an eye on me, and I'm very quiet. I don't say anything. And so they did this spiel, and this guy came up and did the spiel, and then they brought up the technical director, who I happen to know. And the way he brought it up and said, well, now we've done our presentation. Our technical director is going to come up, and he's going to do a presentation on the technical side of this. And so I'm sure this will be able to help you out a lot. So he comes walking up to the podium, and he goes, okay, anybody have any questions? That was his opening line. And I'm sitting there going, well, where's the presentation, right? I mean, come on, give me a break. So one of the press guys said, well, yeah, I've got a question. He goes, yeah, okay. What about cables? How long are cables going to go? And his comment was, that's not our business. That's up to the cable companies. Next question, please. It was like, this is why. This is exactly why we have this issue with cables not being the champions, because they can be the champions. And, okay, they're not going to help you do it. We can do it. And, you know what I'm talking about.
I mean, I've been asked over the years a zillion times probably, like, what's the spec on the length for HDMI cables? And I'm like, I don't know. It's not really listed anywhere. Nobody's ever defined it.
No. Actually, the defining spec on that really at the end of the day is in the I2C bus, not in the video. Because the I2C bus is very vulnerable to losses.
Yeah, and if that fails, you're toast. You're dead in the water.
You're toast anyway, right? Yeah. So I mean, then video comes next, and it depends on how the wires are arranged too. That could be a difference too. But
sure.
Yeah, it's hard to put a number on it. And then you go out and see these AOCs that we just happen to have here right now that are doing 40 meters.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're doing
cool.
extremely well.
That's really
cool. About. And so technology will move on. There's still some copper there that can be used. We've experimented with some silicon for copper.
Yeah.
To get copper out 10 meters at 48G.
That's good.
So there's still some of that available. You know, and if what you know, if there wasn't technology, Jason, where would we be?
Yeah, it'd be, you know, be
So,
throwing sticks at each
but
other
yeah,
still.
yeah. So yeah, so I'm looking forward to it. So let's see if any
Yeah,
questions that come in. You want to know maybe something about what you'd like to know about?
yeah, totally,
We can do a
guys.
presentation on that.
Yeah,
We have tons of material,
mhm. I
that
don't
we've done over the years.
I don't see any other questions in the question box for today, at least. So thanks, Jim, for that question. That was an awesome question. But again, guys, if you have questions for Jeff and you want to learn a little bit more and we want to go a little bit deeper with some of this stuff, any suggestions or feedback or questions that you might have that are specific, again, hit me up at jason@murideo.com. Jeff, I think you and we should probably reconvene maybe after the holidays and look at doing another session early next year. Sound good?
Sounds good. That's great.
Awesome, man. Well,
That's
thank you
great.
so
That's
much for
great.
your time and your knowledge. And
Oh
again,
yeah.
I love what you
Yeah.
do, and I totally admire what you do.
Yeah.
You know, as somebody who's done a lot of calibration work on displays, you know, it's also my job to be agnostic and to just look at the science. And so we're very
Yeah.
similar in that sense. So I enjoy
Absolutely.
talking to you and thanks a
Yeah.
whole bunch. And if there's any other
Yeah.
last minute questions, now's the time because we got about a minute left. One last question for you, Jeff. This is always something that's always been on my mind. I see this with some inexpensive TVs. They calibrate really, really well, and it kind of surprises you. Have you ever had a product come in and maybe it's inexpensive, or maybe you weren't expecting much out of it, and it blows your mind? Has that ever happened to you before?
Countless times.
I love that. That's so cool. So
Countless
cool.
times. You think it's gonna be bad, and then you say, oh my God, this is
And it
hot.
rocks.
You know,
Yeah,
and it
I
rocks,
love
right?
that.
So yeah, it's
I
there.
love that.
Thank you so much for the invite today, Jason. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Thank you, Jeff. And yeah, we'll talk to everybody next month. And everybody have a nice, safe holiday, and we'll talk to you
All right.
soon. Thanks again, Jeff.
Stay safe. Stay
All
safe,
right.
everybody.
Bye-bye.